G'day, today is a tech session. We are going to do a tubeless conversion on a mountain bike, but the same applies on other bikes such as gravel bikes or road bikes. First of all, you'll need a bit of equipment. So besides the tyre that you're going to be using for the conversion, because not all tyres are tubeless ready, you want to make sure you get a tubeless ready tyre. There is also the rim tape. That's a special tape. It's not just some sort of electrical tape. You need to actually have proper rim tape. Your local bike store will be able to help that. You'll need some tubeless valves, and you'll obviously need a tubeless sealant of some sort. Some other key components, obviously a pump, you'll require that, and some other tools like scissors, tyre levers, and something to measure the tubeless sealant with. Another thing that I find useful is the shell light, and that is clean the rim before applying the rim tape so we know it applies correctly. There are a few key things to take into consideration when you're doing a tubeless conversion. One is making sure your tyre is rested. Now, looking at the tyre on the packet here, it is got cable ties around it, it's been folded. It's really affected how the structure of the bead. You need to take it out of the packaging, a couple of days before you're due to put the tyre on. Some way of doing it is, if you've got a spare rim, maybe inflate it on that rim with a tube in it so it pushes the bead out and really sets that bead in place. Or another thing I do is just droop it over the handlebars in its natural form, and then it'll eventually come back into play after a couple of days. First of all, let the air out, then remove the bead off the rim so you can get the tube out. Taking the tyre off the rim, remove the tube, then take the rest of the tyre off the rim. Alright, once we've got that off, now we want to remove the rim tape. This is not the right rim tape. This is just to prevent rubbing on the inner tube with the spoke holes. So we won't need it after this, but it should just pry out like that. It's gone. Now this is a relatively new bike, so the actual rim is clean, but we're still going to go and just give it one quick wipe before we apply the rim tape to it. One thing some manufacturers do better than others is wear the rim, because the hoop is just one piece of aluminium, but then it's joined or pinned with welds together. Now this one here, as you can see, has got a good amount of glue that's protecting those pinnings, so that makes this an airtight joint. Some of them have just got pins, so you're relying on the rim tape and a good application of the rim tape to ensure that that's sealed. No amount of goo from your tyre sealant will seal aluminium or carbon, so make sure that you do good rim tape. One thing I have found is that no matter how good this joint is, I make sure I've got the right width rim tape to actually do the job. So what we want to do now is measure the internal width of the rim. So we want to measure it from the shoulder to the shoulder, including all of the valley there. So just get your piece of paper, insert it into the rim like that, into the valley, carefully holding. Then with our pen, just push it into the other side like that, and then just at the top, mark our point. That there should be the correct internal rim width. Measuring that out now, 32mm is the largest rim tape that we can use for these rims. Now we're ready to put the tape on. So what we want to do here is, this is our valve hole. We want to do 10 centimeters before it when we're starting it, and then when we finish, we want to finish 10 centimeters after it. So between these two spoke holes here and these two spoke holes at the end. Taking our rim tape, putting it in the valley like so, and then just push in the shoulders. It'll just push down nice and neatly. What this will do is give us a good
seal when we go to put the tyre on, because we have just plastic and rubber that the sealant has to work with. It also makes it effective around the other side of the rim, where the rim is pinned and sealed that way. But the problem with pinning is it does not mean it's sealant proof, and trying to make sealant take up that weld is near impossible. So use the correct size rim tape, and that's why we've measured it.
Pushing down with your finger as you go along, it'll ensure that it's got a good grip of the interior of the rim. So as you go along, you're pushing down the center, but you also want to push down the shoulders. So that then sets the tape in nice and tight into the shoulders of the rim. And as you can see, it's below the lip, which you never want the tape to be above the lip, because then the tyre will not see it and it can make it dangerous. So always make sure it's below the lip of the rim, and then keep the tape tight, pull tight as you're working your way around, and then you'll never have any problems with rim tape later on down the track. Once we're finished, all right, that's the valve hole there. We want to cut halfway there. A nice sharp pair of scissors, cut along the section there, and then finish it off. I take a rag and then I just push down, make sure all the air bubbles are out of the rim tape, and then just go down the shoulders of the rim as well. As you can see, the rim tape's nicely applied, both on that side and that side. It's now ready for us to put the tyre back on the rim and then put our sealant in. But before we apply the tyre, we need to now apply our valve. You don't cut. Now I see a lot of people, they do a cut where the valve is and where it's going to go through into the rim. However, the problem with a cut is once you cut this tape, it will then elongate, and that cut will get longer and longer, and then that's where you're going to get problems with the valve. So what I usually use is a spike, so just like a screw or something like that, an actual spike where the valve is going to go through, and then that way the valves being round, the spike is round, that there is no way for a cut then to elongate and then give you problems. So just feel where the valve hole is. I usually just go up through the valve hole and then just see roughly where the spike's got to go, and then I come back through where that hole is. Bang. Now it's ready. Now take our valve, make sure it's wound in, so then that way it gives them a bit of strength as you put it in. Line up the valve, that section will lay across the valley there. Poke our valve through the hole, push it all the way through, and then right down, and then that will be seated neatly in the valley. And put our O-ring on, and then do up our collar. You should only have to do the collar up finger tight. So that's the collar there. You should only have to do it up finger tight. It allows you, when you're on a trail and you have to put a tube back in it, you can undo the valve and put a tube back in, and away you go again. So now taking our tyre, we want to put our tyre back on the correct way, and for extra bonus points, line up our lovely logo here with our valve and stick one edge back in, just the same as you would with a tube setup, so I won't go too much into it. Okay, we've got one side done. Start the second side off. It's always easier to start opposite the valve, because what they do with the rim and putting that channel into a rim allows for the bead to sit into the rim, so you can get the opposing side
onto the rim without any tools. And there we have it, one tyre fitted to the rim. Before we put tyre sealant into the tyre, we'll want to make sure that we've got a good seat with our bead. So it's best to do a dry run with just inflating with air prior to put sealant into it. One thing I like to do before I start pumping, it makes it a lot easier, if I pull the actual bead out as much as possible to the edge of the rim. What that will do is initiate a seal, and this applies with gravel bikes, mountain bikes and road bikes. It helps with the pumping to get your tyre inflated. Yep, we've got air pressure in there. Now keep inflating until the bead pops out. So you'll hear some pinging as you inflate. So you'll want to inflate to the maximum PSI of the tyre and then deflate again. What that does is it sets the bead against the rim, make sure everything's in place. There we go, tyre's inflated, holding air. The little seam that runs around just above the bead should be uniform all the way around the rim. I'm pretty happy with that. Now it's time for some sealant. Just popping the bead at one side of the rim. We don't want to pop the other side because it's sealed nicely. And we just want to open up a small amount so we can put the sealant there. Now you could just take the valve core out and use a syringe to push it through the valve core. But mountain bikes, because you've got to put so much sealant in there, it's just better to pop the bead off the rim. Take our latex based sealant and give it an extra good shake. You want to get all the latex particles moving around inside the liquid. So the first set of tyres you set up with this liquid should be as good as the last set of tyres you set up with a liquid, because they should have all the same amount of latex through the liquid itself. We've shaken the latex up through the liquid, so we're ready to apply it. Now, this particular brand recommends 60 mils per tyre. For Australian conditions, double that, so 120 mils that we're going to put here today. Take your measuring device. Once your sealant's in the tyre, just carefully put your bead back on. As you're rolling the sealant around inside the tyre, you shouldn't get any mess. And we should be good to go. 40 psi should do us. And once you're done, give it a good bounce to get the sealant moving around inside the tyre. Check for any leaks around the bead. No, the bead is good. It's all seated perfectly. We're done. Really, there's nothing that can go wrong. It's just paying attention to key areas of doing a tubeless conversion that'll make sure it's very reliable for you out in the field. Thanks for watching today. If you've got any questions, comments below. You know the usual, give it a like. I hope you've learned something today. I hope to have some more tech videos coming out in the future. So if you're interested in that, or if there's something that you want to know how to do, just drop it in the comments. Thanks very much for watching. Catch you later.